Good day. How's everybody doing today? I'm just using a new program to do this streaming, so I'm hoping some things work a little better. That's why in front I came up before my countdown clip, so. Okay. Okay, great. So how's everything going today? I'm just working here, and I have a problem. There we go. Had something come through my phone, and there, and I have hearing aids, so things come through my head, and so I'm hearing these voices, and that's why. As I get used to this. Oh, that's good. I didn't bring my supper up today. I decided to actually put it off. So, like I said, I'm using new software today, so I hope it goes well. I can do this different thing with the chats, so I can actually get it and the chats come right up here beside me. So I'm just checking on something though that I wasn't positive about, and okay, yeah, no, they're not coming up in here. Okay. Oh, there we go. They are. Yeah. That's and now I did remember to put on my mic. How is it hearing? Because I'm using a different mic today. I did that on purpose so I wouldn't have the issue. Yeah, if it was 24 hours, I'd have a hard time doing it. It's just something that I'm looking for. It's basically people would have access. I've noticed from talking to people on some of the, well, and more notice there's discussions, and not necessarily me engaging them on some of the genealogy Facebook groups and stuff. People are getting really kind of tired of all the non-genealogy stuff related, whether it's ads or just what you have to get to look through your feeds, like not within the groups necessarily, but just getting there. So I'm trying to look at different ways to see to provide a service that specifically for people that want to talk genealogy, want help with genealogy. Okay, so the voice. Well, yeah, I usually use my this little lapel mic that I have, and trying to get it adjusted and then figure out, especially when I'm doing recordings, it can be hard. Some of my videos, I'm trying to turn if I am having background sound or music down, I'm trying to have it tuned lower. Are you talking sort of like the zing or buzzy effect that I had? Because those there, yeah, they are a little louder, I noticed. So, excuse me. Okay, so I had a busy day today, actually. So I was having a long discussion with a friend of mine in London, working out a few things and talking about a few things. He's from Canada originally, and he was telling me about this great event in London. He's going to the poutine social. Yeah, the swish effect. Yeah, the swish effect. It was loud. Yeah. Okay. So I'm a little behind what I was having the plan to get up. Um, I a couple things. Originally, before I was on YouTube, I was had done a podcast, and still did it as I did the YouTube, but it was really getting hard to always get the quality guests I wanted on specifically for a podcast. So I started recording and doing those again. So I actually have one coming out this Monday. Um, Originally, my podcast was bi-weekly, and then it kind of became monthly, and now it's going to be occasionally. I'm going to hopefully get to the point that where I'm having weekly podcasts again. It's all really depends on the quality of the the guests that I'm able to get. Um, so this week is good guests. If you have French heritage, it's going to be interesting for you as we talk about basically the French heritage in North America, ways to search areas where you'll find French that you wouldn't necessarily thought. Um, it's speaking mostly in that sense in the United States in different areas. Um, and so, yeah, my guest is she's a genealogist that does YouTube as well. So hopefully it will be enjoyable. It will be up on YouTube, and it should also be going out on my regular podcast stream as well. Um, so I actually I when I uploaded it, it didn't upload. It was supposed to upload and not be scheduled until Monday, and I noticed it came up at the same time my other video was coming out pretty much the same time yesterday. So I had to quickly. Luckily, I was on monitoring things, um, and it went up just a little early, but it's been put back into the members section of my my videos. Okay, so today I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the challenges that you face in Canadian genealogy that may or may not be there for other people, but I think they're common no matter where you're looking, and sort of the ways that I personally am able to deal with them to keep on being motivated, keep active in pursuing my goals and finding those ancestors, and also one of the shortfalls that I find that a lot of people have when they're doing genealogy is they know the genealogy well, but they don't know the actual history well. That's why I really consider myself more of a family historian as much as I'm a genealogist. And it's one of the reasons why I've been doing some of those videos on specific people groups, because a lot of people they find out that they're, well, for instance, Ulster Scot, but they actually know nothing about the what that actually means. A lot of people, or you say Scots Irish, they think what, like, for instance, my mother's side's all Scottish, my dad's side's all Irish. That doesn't make me Scots Irish. Scots Irish is speaking about a specific subset of Scottish people that were part of the plantation in Ulster County. For the most part, there were a few other places in Ireland, but mostly Ulster County, which is why in basically everywhere else besides North America, besides the United States, actually, we refers to them as Ulster Scots. So that's where I'm going to go to today with this. But I'm going to talk about some of those challenges and some of the reasons why having that history and understanding makes your genealogy a little easier, a little more interesting when you're starting to fill in the stories. It can give you clues of things to look for, and where to look for them. So I'm just checking out my new software, and I think it's going well. One second here. Okay. There we go. Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to be too long today, actually. Excuse me. So yeah, one of the things that I personally find as a struggle and way to deal with it is when you get some of um, those brick walls, those roadblocks, and you really you get to a dead end, and you're stuck. That's often when it's really good if you have that community of other people that do genealogy that you're reaching out to, and you know um, they might not be able to solve your specific issue, but they can talk to you about different approaches they might have taken, places where they might have found records that um, they weren't expecting. Um, Sometimes it's the things that really um, the answers are in front of your face, and you don't know it, or you don't realize it, um, because you forget to look at a thing as a um, source of information. I take, for example, myself and my great grandmother on my mother's side, who I knew. She lived until the time I was 9, almost 10, and I knew both my grandmothers. They both died within a year of each other, well, just over a year. But they, my mother's mother, um, I had a difficult time cracking the tree when I was looking for records, because um, I I didn't know um, at the time her the family, the full names of the. I knew her sister, who also lived in my lifetime, was named Florence or Flora, um, and I knew her father. I'd gotten that out of my grandmother, that her grandfather's name was Charles. I didn't really get much more, um, but there was in a collection of albums and pictures that when um, we were preparing to move, my mother and I were preparing to move my grandmother into a nursing home. Well, she'd been moved there, but we were planning and getting ready to sell her house. Um, we went through, and I found this treasure trove of pictures, and I found one with my grandmother's own writing saying grandfather, and then um, Uncle Donald, and he I was able to find that, and as much as I asked my mom before about things, it's just funny. Recently, I found it because I showed that picture to one of her cousins. So one of um, my my second cousins, or I guess it's first cousins once removed. Um, Second cousins once. The second, I forget what exactly what the relationship there is. Anyways, it's one of my mom's cousins. Um, Anyways, I was sending her this because I was also sending her a picture I found of her father when he was young, and that she didn't have. She's not in the genealogy, but then she talks to my mom regularly, and my mom, who had been there when we found the picture, but I was going through things, and we didn't really have time to discuss or look into them. But when I was showing her the images, she said, "Oh, yeah, that's he moved to California, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't even really, when I talked to her mother about her parents, I mean, they were really kind of tight-lipped, and I've asked questions before. I never knew that um, my my mom's granduncle had moved to California, or his name. I didn't even get it, but I had gotten it on this picture, and at that point I knew the name, and then she knew exactly who I was talking about. She says, "Yeah, I remember when I was about 9 or 11. He came back. He came in back to Cape Breton. He was visiting, and he had a large a large car with California plates. He had moved there." Um, so I found that really interesting. First of all, that he was the key to finding out a lot of things, because once I was able to find his name, I was able to verify um, my great grandmother's, the rest of her family in the census, and able to get a few other things and verify that the ages and stuff. Yeah, especially if you have stuff written. Even family Bibles. I don't know how many antique stores, pawn shops. Um, I've been at where people have um, their family Bibles there, and they're just such a um, really a reservoir, deep um, reservoir of facts that family is missing. There's been occasions, if it's not priced too bad, that you can try to track down who might own it, and um, especially if they do any type of genealogy, people forget some of those common things. Or one that people, when they're looking at newspapers often, then they'll take the time to look um, they'll look for information on their births, deaths, those type announcements, um, wedding announcements, but they forget other things. Um, a lot of places, especially smaller places, they'll report what seem like insignificant events as news. Um, Again, I'm using my grandma's town in Cape Breton. They would report when in the little paper, like when people were visiting, from any distance, they there might be a report in the newspaper, or there might be a get-togethers. People forget to look at those type of social announcements. There's often a large amount of information, um, and not even just looking at that, but also looking at when you go and if you're able to get lists and see sometimes they'll have photos from weddings, especially when you might start to see people that are showing up. If you can find guest books from weddings and from churches, you'll be able to, if you find a guest book from one or two siblings, uh, like two siblings, and you start comparing things, you'll be able to start seeing people that are commonly showing up, and you can it can give you some names to then start looking for possible relatives, and then you um, that you might be able to um, actually get some decent data from, and names, then go searching further. People often forget those. I call them the the lateral, the relatives, because often when we're doing our family trees, we just think the up and down. We don't think of all the sibling groups, because maybe we're not as necessarily interested, because they're not we're not directly descended from them. But when you start searching them, because often you might find a roundabout path to get to a third or fourth great grandparents, because you were able to connect a second cousin and then follow up. Yeah, yeah. List all the bridesmaids and who are relatives, because you'll get people there. That's a good one. Definitely. Um, when you're looking there and you see list of bridesmaids and groomsmen, and sometimes something as simple as if you're familiar with the church records and you see it's a different minister that has performed the wedding, that might be a clue that that person is significant in the family's life somewhere, that it could be a relative, or it could be a minister from a place they had previously lived, which can sometimes fix a lot of dead ends, because you're looking for a relative because you thought they lived in this community, but you're not finding it. You're having a hard job finding records, and so they might have possibly moved there at some point, and you might have already sort of deducted that, but you have no clue where they moved from because you can't find any record of it anywhere. Sometimes if you find a minister, or find, like I said, people in wedding announcements or things that are talking about people who've come from one place. If you notice, a lot of people seem to be coming from one area, chances are it's because you have relatives there, or that person, if they're not related, that these people are coming from, particularly then, that means that either their mother, their father, or they themselves might have been from there at some point. That's exactly, you can find out which church they were married in if you find the name. Yeah, it's and you can find the name. Like I said, by looking at the minister's name, you might easily find the record of what churches they've been at. So you might find where the connections were, if you can't find it elsewhere. So yeah, sometimes just that thinking and talking to people, having that spot where you can relate and talk, and have somebody even double check your work, so to speak, to if there's something you're really unsure of. My sort of rule of thumb is, I before I officially put something in my tree, I usually like to have at least 2 decent records that can confirm it. But sometimes even that's wrong. Thinking again, on my mother's side, there was I got to a point, her father, and then her father's father, then her father's father, so it would be my fourth, my fourth great my third great grandfather. And I knew he was from Scotland, and I knew his name, and I knew his age, like when he was born. But because I could find it in his death record, but it didn't say in his. I could find it because I knew he was from Scotland, and I knew his age because I could find that out. But in his death record, I found a death record for this Donald McKinnon, who matched everything else, approximately the right year of birth, and it said he was born in the Isle of Rum, and I was pretty confident, well, this got to be the right person, and I think that it's here, like it meets the things, and his wife's name was even the right first name, because I didn't know the maiden name of the wife. And I thought that, because the record had that his wife was predeceased, and I didn't think anything of it until I was talking to another person who does research in that area, and this was after a while, and he said, "No, you have the wrong Donald McKinnon. This Donald McKinnon, he was married, yes, but his wife died young, and he never got remarried, never had any children. So you can't be descended from him. He would be the wrong person." So that that particular person, it was just that was that one record, that deaf record. I thought that's got to be him, and it gave me that he actually put the his birthplace is the Isle of Rum in Scotland, and I was thinking, well, that must be where my McKinnons from Scotland came from, and yeah, I was wrong. It happens, but having somebody to talk about things, and if I hadn't really had that discussion, I probably would not have. I would have gone on thinking that was the right Donald McKinnon, and if I was able to start getting records on him, I might have wound up spending years, but hours and hours upon time over years, trying to track down his ancestors and where I would have been off. So yeah, those types of discussions are a way of breaking through those brick walls. Basically, it's like you can find, or like I said, you can find just people who will tell you a different way to approach things, a different way, even to look at records. They can look at the same record and you can say, well, what do you think? Does this look, am I right to make this assumption based on these facts? And sometimes that fresh, not as much invested person, because you get really invested in your ancestors, and sometimes we will to have something, especially when you've been working on hard and you think you finally made the breakthrough. Going back and just getting a person to say, hey, can you take a look at this? I'm there, but I just, something doesn't seem right, or that will tell you, be able to look at things quickly and tell you. Some people, like I said, even without expertise in a specific area, will just be able to look at those records and just talk about the actual information there and go and give you some ideas. So that's one of the ways I sort of deal with finding breakthroughs, is through the people I know, the community you build up talking to people in the genealogy world. But one of the other things is really getting to know the communities, the history of the communities they're from. I know in Prince Edward Island, back in the 80s at some point, the island was giving all these little communities to compile their histories. So it was really good. A lot of historical associations, local history societies sprang up, but a lot of organizations in a community were starting to do their histories, and there was some money to help publish these books. So there's a big, you can find a lot of histories of specific areas in PI because of that. But even before that, in a lot of these places have detailed histories, especially if you're looking late 1800s, early 1900s, you'll find I know in Nova Scotia, a lot of histories of the different counties, towns, villages, because people were at the point that they started writing this stuff down, and while people still had it fresh in their mind, there was those records are then being compiled. So some of it would be secondary sources, but a lot of them are because they were talking to people that lived during those times still, as much as like we might. It's getting further and farther between, but we might, if somebody was a veteran of World War II, you might have had an opportunity to record their stories, or even some of your grandparents' age, you get to record their stories at that time. So those people are still around. So in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you're talking to people that, that could have been born in the early 1800s, late 1700s, might have been first generation Canadians. So yeah, getting to understand and reading those things, and even if you don't have a time, I've this is one of the things I've used AI for really effectively in my family history research is finding PDFs copies of some of those histories and spurting them into something like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, which I use because you get a lot of the services found in Google Gemini that you don't have with ChatGPT without having to pay extra, and taking them and actually getting them to read it. And if you can find one of your ancestors' names and you know them, you can ask it to, can you review this topic? I'm looking for review this PDF. I'm looking for all the information you might have on Donald Smith, whose father's name was Roger, and his mother's name was whatever it winds up being. And can you point me to where I need to read and summarize the information in here about them, and also summarize where these are in the book, and it will get you down to giving you a good summary and telling you the pages, which these books that weren't indexed, it's a useful tool. I've actually went so far as I asked one to, using the book and the information, could you write a family tree of these of this person? I want their any ancestors, any descendants, and can you do a family tree of it? And really good results. It's as far as the information that's available in the book. And again, these are secondary sources, but if you get the right one, and it's the right time period from when it was written and the time period they're covering, you know you're talking to people who remember these people, and yeah, you can get a lot of great information that way. I just really find getting that no, and it's a way to know you can know the history, but it's getting there. And it's often I found you read books and you know the information's there because you've read it, you know it. At the time you might not have been looking for that particular piece of information. ChatGPT's it's a really handy way of using it to interpret documents and help you go through a large sum of pages without having to reread it yourself. Especially, like I said, a lot of these books where they're not indexed, you can actually tell it what index you want. You could actually feed it into it and ask them if they could just produce an index with a reference for every individual person that is spoken of, and you would have a record there. So if you were looking for Alexander Mackenzie, you'd be able to, just like you would in a book that a biography. So okay, yeah, so that's it's kind of it's a new tool, and then there's lots of ways that artificial intelligence can be useful in genealogy, but I really want to say, from my own experience, you also got to take it with a grain of salt and know where the weaknesses are. I did when I first started YouTube, I did for 1 month. I was trying out doing when Shorts first came out. I was doing this day in Canadian history. And the biggest thing I found was it was hard finding something to speak about every day, even for 60 seconds. So it was something I felt worthwhile, but it was all the prep work that went into it made it difficult. And then wanting to do it consistently would require so much hours of research at that point I didn't have necessarily to do, to just find the items for each day. So I thought this would be a good use of ChatGPT. They're supposed to have an understanding of the database, be able to search things. So when ChatGPT came out, it's one of the first things. Oh, I can revive this idea, and so I started it about. I was going to start it. I think January 2024 was my plan. So I went through it and I said, okay, let's. I asked a very specific question. I'm looking for something that happened, can you find a historic event that happened on January 1st in Canada and I was just looking for summaries for it, which, some of the stuff was really good, gave me some good things that I could use. But then I just started noticing things like it was telling me that a province became part of Canada in that date. And it's like, no, that's not when it happened. Because I knew from my own research that that wasn't right. And I started checking some of the facts. It was really hit and miss. It was not reliable. Even now, when I'm doing videos, sometimes I'm stuck looking for specific things. On the video I'm doing it with the Scots Irish, I asked ChatGPT, was there any Scots Irish that were fathers of the Confederation? And they told me there were. John A. Macdonald. And I said, well, he was born in Gloucester, in Glasgow, Scotland. And it quickly said, oh, you're right. He wouldn't be considered Scots Irish. Like, then why did you tell me in the first place? But so yeah, it can be dangerous if you don't go back and you don't actually check, or you don't have that sort of background knowledge. But when you're feeding it a book and you're giving it the data, I find it's pretty accurate, because all it's doing is rereading it. And there's a lot of great uses that you can find. Yeah, indexing old documents are great, because if you can get in a PDF format, it can search through, so you don't have to, which makes life a lot easier. Especially, I like to use a lot of different books when I do my research, or I do family history research as well. Especially, like I said, these books on the different counties in Nova Scotia. I'm searching Nova Scotia for somebody, or whatever it might be. If you can find those, it is really great. Whereas a lot of these books, like I said, just didn't have indexes and stuff. So it makes life easier that way. And you can set up specific parameters. You could read through it, and you can, like I said, you could, if you, especially some of these books I found, and we're giving really detailed. There's great book, and it's telling you all about. It had every generations of a lot of different families, but just the way it was written, they would be mixed all over the place, so there wasn't that constant flow. I couldn't read it like you would a pedigree chart. It would, and as some of these people move the different parts of the county, they would then come up in these other sections, and especially when you're dealing with a lot of common names, you wouldn't necessarily, you might, one of two things, be thinking that it is the same person and it's not, or you not realize that it is the same person. But even to find them, you might be, some of the stuff they had broken down by families, and you could find a lot of stuff, but then the other stuff was by communities. So even getting some of that's where it overlapped. Find the overlapping information. It was really helpful for doing that. Okay, so I'm getting close to 50 minutes here. I don't know if anybody has any questions, anything they're really struggling with, anything, any questions that people want to know, things that they're struggling with in searching their own genealogy, or understanding their own history, even of their people group. That's one of the first things, like I say, I do when I'm doing genealogy research for people. When I start talking about finding out where their ancestors were, starting, if I'm not familiar with that area already, starting to do some deep dives and finding that information, because you do find all kinds of information that you wouldn't expect. And it also gives you really good context, because you might not find, when you're trying to fill in the story, the biography of an ancestor, you might not find some specific facts that give you a lot other than their birth and death that sort of fills in their life. But when you start to read things that happen in the community, you then can get an understanding of what they lived through, and they would have been witness to, which at least adds some context to that person, knowing that these were the things when they grew up, the events that were happening in the community that they would have been part of or witness to. So I don't know, like there, if like I said, if anybody has any questions, anything that's going on, any things they need a hand with, or just want somebody to look at. One of the things, like I said, that I have that video that's going to be in my podcast coming up. On that, there is a opportunity to, if you have French family and you'd like some help doing your French research, there's a free consultation with my guest host. She's offering to one of my viewers. There'll be, in that podcast and on the YouTube video for it, there'll be a link to enter the contest. So that should be released at 2 p.m. Atlantic on Monday. It's a long watch. It's a hour and 20 minutes, but it's a pretty lively discussion throughout. We're sharing back and forth, mostly her on talking about a lot of, but me asking questions that I know I've been asked about French research, or that I can think of that people would be asking, because they ask similar things. Some pointing out of some of the similarities of the way traditions and things have passed along, some of the French similarities to Scottish similarities, and the Irish, some of the ways that communities integrated with each other, particularly thinking in Canada. We talked a little bit about it, but thinking of the French, who were predominantly Roman Catholic, and how often they would, when Irish people came to communities, they would gravitate towards some of the French communities. They already came to an area because they already had a Catholic church set up, and so you'll see those mixes of Catholic and French communities often in different places, or Catholics, Catholic Scots, Irish and French communities, sorry, or you'll see the Catholic Scots and the French, very very close knit communities together, where then you'll have LeBlancs and McDonald's living right next to each other, and there would have been intermarriage at different points through it. So it's really, I was talking about it from the Atlantic Canadian perspective, and she was talking about what happened when some of these French, the early New France people that didn't stay in Quebec but roamed farther afield, how they would go, and they would often set up communities, and they might be the first Catholic church there. So then they would, other Catholic ethnic groups would go and they would settle around those communities as well. So if anybody has any questions, do ask them now. If not, I'm going to head out in a minute. My wife's got a beautiful supper ready for me. It's almost 7 o'clock here, so but I'll be back the same time next week. I start just a little past 6 p.m. You wonder why I always had it set for like 6:05. It's because when I first started doing this, I often found there was difficulties getting the stream running, and like last week where I forgot the audio. So then I found that if I changed it to 6:05, there was I would basically be able to make sure I was ready for the 6 o'clock. I hope this time works out. I don't know if there's a better time. If you're watching this on the replay, let me know if there's a better time that works out. My schedule's a lot much differently now than it had been, so I have a little different opportunities. But I think this time works. There was points last summer I was getting, there was a couple of live streams, I had 1,000 people in here. And this seemed to be a time that worked. Hopefully that might happen again, but it was actually got to be overwhelming in some of those. There wasn't always as much even discussion. I found when there was too many people and it was too hard to follow when they did start discussions. Anyways, so I'm going to head out, and if there's anything ever, you can on the form in the description of this video, and actually in all my videos, there's a link, but I made it really simple now. It's just ask.howwegothere.ca. You go to the website, and it'll bring you right to the form, or you can even use the email ask@howwegothere.ca, and that will send me an email if you have an email question you'd like to ask. So you have a great day.